All right, welcome to the October TriEmbed meeting. No new people here, so no introductions are needed. Announcements. The annual PCB Carolina trade show is at the McKimmon Center again this year. And it is on November 8th. All day long. You can get free tickets.
We're going to need another one of those IEEE screwdrivers with the nice plug-in thing.
The Phillips on one end and straight
Yep,
on the other end.
yep. It's,
I have a Samtech one here,
okay.
but I can't get it out.
Yeah, it's
It's twisted or something.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those types of things.
yeah, they mark the passage of time.
Yeah, oh my God, this
Eventually have
one's
a
like
pile of them.
ancient. This is like from Hapog, Long Island. God knows how long I've had this one.
Yep.
It's what is it? EM something. ER. Whoop, turned it backwards. No, maybe I was right to begin with. EMI. Whoever the hell EMI is.
Yeah, I think your video is mirrored, so if you hold something up.
Do we want to have an in-person meeting somewhere in December?
That sounds like a good idea.
That may be possible.
That's 2 months away. Yeah, we can start working on that.
Yeah. We don't have to rent a big auditorium.
Not for the four of us.
Where would we do it?
There are any number of establishments which that would be, a table for four wouldn't be a burden. It's I've used the Forge, but it seems unnecessary. I've used Abbey Roads, and they they have good hamburgers. It's I don't know where else.
Well, we used to do it at the university, but I guess we need a student or
a faculty member, I think. We still
member.
have a contact.
Would just show up. They're not going to throw old guys out. I mean, it's we have a certain privilege, and I have a student ID.
There you go.
Oh, you do at NCSU?
Yeah, he's a grad student.
Okay, so all
grad
we have
student
to
in
do is
material
reserve
science.
the room.
I wanted access to the electron microscopes, and the easiest way was to declare myself a grad student and elbow my way in.
So you can probably reserve a room.
Yeah, I get to I kind of stride around the place with my cane, and the students open doors for me, figuring I'm some kind of faculty member that needs their deference, and I let them. I mean, what do I look like, a fool if they want to bow and scrape for me out?
There's another trade show going on November 1st and 2nd down at the convention center, and it's called Design the Number 2 Part.
Yeah,
I've been there once. They have, if you're interested in metal stamping and water jet cutting and There was one booth that was laser cutting through 3/4 inch steel plate. I asked them, and they said they have an 8,000 watt fiber laser that they use to cut through said material. A lot of wire harness making
Yeah,
people,
it's
and
a little less cerebral than I like. I've been
yeah,
there a
Wire
couple times.
harness?
yeah. You
That's
need wire
interesting.
harnesses made.
I used to do wire harnesses and equipment for NASA like centuries ago. I was in my mid 20s.
Yep.
You were never in your mid-20s.
Yeah. Strange to believe it, huh?
Yeah, it's strange credibility.
Yeah, I
So
worked for a company that did government contracts. We built telemetry switching systems. Um, they were just a bunch of reed relays with push buttons in a matrix. So you connect the incoming satellite feed to an outgoing computer ingestion feed, so to speak. And it
these are in
connected
ground
to,
stations.
yeah, so it connected so that we made 6 or 7 or 8 of them, and they got shipped around the world to the different um, satellite stations that uh, uh, communicate with um, with the satellites. So they want to have a communication 24 hours a day, right? So the only way to do that is to have multiple places around the world.
Yep.
And then they all came back on these honeycomb memory devices. They were about that big, but they were hexagonal, and they plugged into a computer in Maryland called, geez, I used to remember that name like the back of my hand. Was it Cyclops? I think it might have been Cyclops. I don't even know if the computer system still works. They had, I'd seen pictures of it, never been there, but they had these long rooms with like really high cabinets that went, I mean, like 100 feet into the air. They were a huge room. And there was an arm that went flying down each hallway and would know exactly where the right canister was, would pull it out, bring it back, and plug it gently into the computer that you're sitting at.
Wow.
I worked when I was at IBM. I worked on the installation remotely of a NATO facility that was built into a cathedral in Spain, and the entire computer banks were on wires that suspended them. So when they had an earthquake, the whole thing would sway.
Yeah, the place that I was, the computer system that these worked was part of NASCAM, NASA Communications.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other announcements? Things going on?
Yeah, of
State
course,
fair starts next week.
these had
This
nothing
week.
at all to do with announcements, but
All right. Let's see if I can share my screen here. All right. Do people see that?
yep, smart pump.
So we've done smart washing machines and smart dishwashers, and
Refrigerators and
so today we're going to do a smart pump. See if I can
what
feel.
kind of pump and for what?
So this is a Google Earth view of the horse farm where my wife has her horse. You can see the little tracks out here where the manure spreader goes out and dumps manure on the paddocks. The manure spreader is right here. This is a tractor. The manure spreader is there at the end of a little ramp that you run your wheelbarrow up and dump into the spreader. In this red oval here is the pump that we're going to be talking about. And so this is the main barn with the stalls in it. This is a covered arena, the one where I was trying to level it with the sand bony.
Right.
And the gutters on these two buildings go down into some septic tanks, 3 septic tanks that are buried. One's about here, one's about here, and one's about here. And then the pump pumps water out of the septic tanks. And they use that water to water the horses in the barn. And also when they're out in these paddocks, you can kind of see a little round circle there. That's a water trough. This is a water trough. There's another paddock down this way that they have a water trough. Yeah. So the red one is the little pump house with the pump in it. The blue one is one of the water troughs. So this is what the pump kind of looks like. You can buy them at Lowe's or Home Depot or Amazon. They can be wired for 115 volts or 220, 240, whatever. And so it's an electric motor and an
Like the
impeller
voltage
in here.
half the current, huh?
Yep. So it's direct wired. There's a single pole, single throw light switch that turns the pump on and off. And so the main uses of the water is to fill up these water troughs. So they drag a hose from the little pump house all the way down to one of those troughs. And then they come back and they turn the pump on and they set a timer on their phone for 20 minutes or whatever it is that they've figured out how long it takes to fill each one of these tanks. And so they'll set it for that. And then when the alarm goes off, they'll come turn off the pump and put away the hose. And then they also, outside each of the stalls in the barn, they have a number of 5-gallon pickle buckets from Firehouse Subs or places like that where they've got and like outside each stall there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 of these 5-gallon buckets, and they will run a hose into the barn, and then one person will be at the end of the hose, the other person goes and turns the pump on, and they go bucket by bucket down the aisle, filling up all the buckets, and then they have to get somebody to turn off the pump when they're done. So it seems to me it would be nice if we could have the pump turn itself off after 20 minutes or whatever the magic number is for the trough that they're filling up. So they don't have to, when the alarm goes off, run back to the pump and turn it off before the water starts spilling out onto the ground. And then if we had some way of doing remote power on and off of the pump, then you wouldn't need 2 people to do the watering of the buckets inside the aisles. And then another problem they have is sometimes people will, so usually they don't put a nozzle on the end of the hose. That tends to slow down the flow. But sometimes they do, or sometimes they will there's a water valve on the outside of this little pump house where they hook the hoses up to. And sometimes people will close the valve, but they'll forget to turn it off, and it'll sit there and it'll run for an hour or two until somebody walks by and says, why is this thing still running? So it would be nice if the pump could detect that, I've been running here for a long time and no water is going anywhere. Maybe I ought to shut off. There are anecdotal stories I've heard that if you run one of these pumps without letting the water flow through it, the spinning of the impeller inside the pump housing warms up the water, and it can even warm it up to the point where it starts boiling, and then bad things start happening. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. So that's the issue.
So I had a question forming here. I don't know if it completely formed. So currently people are running around doing these things?
Yes.
Okay. How do you want to turn this thing on? You want that to be automated also?
Well, for the water troughs, they have to run a hose and hook it up to the pump house. So they're at the pump house, and so turning it on is not a big deal. They currently do it with a switch. It could be done with alternative means if that makes it better. This is out in the open, and so it needs to be weather resistant, rain resistant.
But what you want to do then is to shut it off when what are you filling, tanks, or those are the water holes you're filling?
Yeah, the big water troughs, and
The
so it'll
water
be a
trough.
100-gallon thing or a
Okay.
300-gallon thing, and
They're open on the top, I guess. So this is what the horses drink out of?
correct.
Yeah. Um,
And having done this for years, they know how long it takes. The pump they have to fill up the water
oh,
trough to the
okay. So,
level that they want it.
the question that I was thinking, I just realized what it was.
Okay.
You may find that instead of trying to go by a time, to have a sensor that indicates when the trough's filled. I mean,
Yeah, you don't. Um,
I was going to say, does that sound doable?
it would have to be some kind of a pressure transducer at the bottom of the trough. You couldn't use a float valve because the horses would tear it up in no time.
Right.
And um,
And you
you'd
couldn't.
have to get that information back from this paddock back to, which can be done. I mean, I don't have internet, but I do have Wi-Fi in the main barn.
Well, and you could also use the ESP Now stuff if you wanted.
Yep, yeah, I'm using that. Um, so that's a possibility. As I say, they know how long they want to run it. They don't usually fill these things full. So in a 300-gallon thing, they may only put 150 gallons, and they know about how long that takes. So
How about you said a float valve? The horses would tear it up. How about a
Yep.
float valve inside a PVC pipe?
They
Horses
would,
couldn't get to it, and the water would just flow up like in the back of a toilet.
yeah, they would chew the PVC pipe.
Oh, okay.
They chew these Rubbermaid troughs pretty good.
Huh.
Um, so we have to put electric fences around some of these to keep the horses from. They like to splash and paw and chew, and so things have to be pretty
In other
tough.
words, they like the horse around.
Yep, they do.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's a challenging situation to try to put sensors in.
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is kind of what Richard mentioned is something in the water itself. In the so is there a drain?
Yeah.
There is a
See,
drain.
well,
So can you tell you may be able to put it at the bottom of the drain to test for water
yeah.
pressure.
So I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can see right here on this guy. So this is a 100-gallon stock tank, right? And there is a little access port there. You can put an electric heater in there to keep these things from freezing in the winter. We don't generally do that. We have, but so that gives you a little bit of access. And it's, if what you're trying to put in there is a little pressure sensor switch or something that could detect, how deep the water is by how much the water's pressing down on a thing in here. But yeah, so that's possible. And this can be usually these things are up against a fence line, and so the back side can be against the fence line where the horses won't get to it. But they chew all around these edges, and we try to keep the horses from sticking their hooves in here and pawing. But
Do these things sit on the ground?
usually, yes. Sometimes they'll be a foot off the ground on some kind of a wooden platform, 4x4s or something, little deck platform, but usually they're on the ground.
Huh. I wonder if the fact that they're so low encourages the horses to try to put their feet in it or whatever you said they were doing. Chewing you can't
Um,
stop. But
right.
anyway, unrelated.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and
I was just
that's probably why some of them are up on something is to,
right.
and it depends on, most of the horses are good and do things the way we want them to do, but occasionally there are a few who are known to be splashers, and they splash the water out of the tub, and
Teenagers.
some of them are, some of them aren't.
Adolescence. Yep.
I put a link to a $15 timer, which is waterproof. That would be the simplest solution.
Yeah, but that goes in. That's a inline plug kind of a thing.
Yeah, you can get all sorts of ones.
And this is weather resistant, outdoor, heavy duty.
That probably
Okay.
doesn't carry enough current, but that was just the first one I came across.
So it's half horsepower. I forget what the pump is, at least half, if not 3/4 or 1. Okay, a timer. There's a mechanical one, outdoor. Yeah, so we need what is it called? Power tail? There used to be a commercial product that I thought the name was Power Tail that was like an extension cord that had a 5-volt TTL input that would control whether it was
Yeah, I've got some solid state
conducting or not.
relays that do that quite nicely, and they're rated for 25 amps.
So that might be good to put inside the pump house for being able to control it with an Arduino of sorts.
Yeah, the ones I have a TTL input, 2 wires output, 25 amps current. They have a little LED that tells you when they're on, and you know you can use them for all sorts of things.
Okay. Any other ideas? My pickleball remote control doojiggy might make a good remote for being able to turn the pump on and off remotely. There could be, I mean, even just having one at the end of the hall that was that you could pick up and press would keep you from having to walk all the way back to the pump house. Okay. Any other ideas? All right. Show and tell.
I just released to GitHub a spectrometer program that acquires data from a spectrometer and displays it, but kind of a specialized market. I have a couple of moderately high-end spectrometers that give me very, very, very accurate data, and I need specific ways of displaying that data. So there's I wrote a
Can you hold that back up again? So does it have a little quartz?
oh sure
A little quartz test tube that slides into it, or is
no,
this
no,
a
this is a whole
camera? Or
spectrometer. It's
Click
got
on
the
his
grading.
screen.
It's a fiber optic input, USB output. It's got a 2000 element photosensor.
okay, so
Yeah,
you just pointed at your leaf or something, right?
yeah, I've got fiber optic tails that come off of it, and lenses that go on the end of the fiber optics. And I've got 2 of them. One of them is visible, and one of them is fairly deep UV, going down to about 100 nanometers. So I can and I want to do contour plots of time versus exposure. And the CAN programs didn't do it for me, so I put together and not that there are a whole bunch of people interested in, but you can do what's called Raman spectroscopy, which is allows you to look at the basically it looks like a Star Trek tricorder. You can actually analyze very accurate elements, um, and with uh, that and some junk around it. Um, so it's I just sent you the link to the if anyone is interested. It's somewhat specific. It's a RESTful interface, just like Edger is, um, and it's a very much a work in progress. Um, I'm not overly happy with it, but um, I figured other people might need it as an example, and um, my version does other things. Um,
So how does one pronounce out of Trun?
it
Out
does pronounce what?
out of Trun? The
Oh, out
name
of
of the
town. Yeah, it's I misspelt it, and that's just it's I
out of
it's
turn. Okay.
I yeah, I've had it for a long, long time. I tried to get out of turn, but I can't spell, so I have an email account in that name that I use, when I want to be anonymous and I'm on dating sites, etc. And it's I've had it for years. Um, so
Dyslexic out of turn.
yeah, it's just out of turn is it's um, um, and so it's a RESTful interface. You run the code should run on the Raspberry Pi. Um, Actually, the display code is somewhat similar to the Edger code, although this is standalone, and it displays the spectral data. And I've got far more complicated display programs, but that's what I released, um, and I will update it. Um, and as I say, it's so that's that was a week or so of work sweating through. It's a USB interface, so you've got to get the a USB driver and blah blah and all of that stuff. Um, and so but I'm it does work, it does display data, and so I'm happy with that. The Edger thing might actually have an application.
Ooh.
Oh, this is um groundbreaking.
Is this the result of your Asheville trip?
No, that was killing brain cells.
Oh, okay.
Um, no, what I've done, the dialogue chip, which has all of the analog crap on it, I've turned into basically a somewhat overly complicated ohm meter, and I'm using it to detect the salinity of water. And the idea is that you can drop the Edger board and connect it to the dialogue chip into the water, and it will record salinity for weeks, months. And apparently, somewhere down south in New Orleans, they're having problem with salinity. So I'm uh, talking to you know some corporate sponsors about you know deploying these, and basically they'd plug back into a Google map, which would display the salinity at any given time at any given point. And turns out that the dialogue chip is just ideal to drop into that slot. It has you can set it up with current sources. You need an instrumentational amplifier. Um, you need a current source that uh, you don't want to get above a volt or so, or you'll start electroplating the electrodes. You get conductivity. You'll get so it's a sort of a very nice application, and the dialogue chips are like 80 cents. So if I can find. And I've got
Can you
some meetings.
reverse your electrodes so that
Yeah,
you're
it's like, but doing that on the ESP is, I'd have to use it. It would get weird to do it on the ESP, and I have the dialogue chip, and I'm embarrassed because I haven't sort of thought of a blessed thing to do with it. And you know, using that so I can keep the voltage down around 100 millivolts, and shut it off, and do all sorts of other nice things. And it has an internal voltage reference, which would give me fairly accurate reading.
Yep.
And it has a thermometer which I can get off the ESP, but it has a moderately good thermometer, and you need that to be able to calculate salinity. So
cool?
that's the report from the Edger project. There's a sort of a release out there. Uh, Pete has been somewhat sidetracked, understandably, but I throw the code at him, and he tries to make sense of it and put it into something akin to a release. And it's I do my best to rein chaos in his life.
Keep
I know,
him.
and he does his best to. No, you can't put in this release, and it's too complicated to explain, and all of that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
Bless his pointy little head. Um, so
So
that's
I've
the
got
report.
some.
That's the report from Edgerland.
So my hummingbird has left. This was back in August, and the hummingbird feeder would empty in about 3 days, 3 or 4 days. And then I forget which was one of these was a storm that went by the coast, and the hummingbird left. I forget whether it was this one in here, September 14th. Yeah, I think it was. But somewhere in there he left, and the rate at which it's going down really slowed down. I did get let me see if I can go back to, so my electronic paper display, you can see there's kind of this flat black line near the bottom. That means that the hummingbird feeder is empty or nearly empty, and has been for quite some time. And then on this side, there are two little battery images. One is the battery out in the hummingbird feeder, and this other one is the battery in this electronic paper display box. The battery in the hummingbird feeder has been lasting for, let's see if I can bring that up. So this is it going down, and then I recharge it, and it goes down.
How long does it last?
Well, from about September 3rd to September 20th. So
Okay.
2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. The one on the e-paper display lasts about 4 or 5 days. And interestingly, so they're both of these are reading the analog pin on a D1 Mini Pro. And so they should be, and they're both the same size LiPo battery. And so you would think that the numbers should be pretty similar. But this one goes up to 980-ish and stops doing things when it gets around 9:15, 9:20. This one goes up to 960. That's fairly close. But it'll go down to like 838 or something before it crashed. Maybe I just have not been letting the hummingbird feeder get all the way down.
Have you gone out and found any dead hummingbirds? Is that the cause of the the lack of
They've
the?
been electrocuted. Oh, they've
Yeah.
gone. No, I think that they migrate away. They come in April and they leave in October. So I've been expecting them to depart. So I did. So the hummingbird feeder is waking up, measuring the weight, sending a small ESP now packet of 6 bytes of payload plus whatever overhead is, and going back to sleep. And that takes half a second, maybe.
But the receiver has to be listening most of the time.
The receiver you have to have a receiver up all the time. The e-paper thing is, so this is a current plot of the D1 Mini running the e-paper. And so it wakes up. These high spikes are correlated with Wi-Fi activity. At the beginning, there's some kind of a radio calibration, and then it hooks up to Wi-Fi and connects to the MQTT broker. And then, I don't know exactly what these are, but at some point, the MQTT broker sends some information back. And so this is the radio activity of these spikes. And then it sits around 75 megahertz, 75 milliamps, sorry, while the e-paper display is being refreshed, which takes
Forever.
30 seconds or so. And so it's running for about 40 seconds, wakes up, runs roughly 75 milliamps for 45 seconds, and then goes back to sleep. And so instead of 0.4 seconds, it's 40 seconds. So that's 100 times longer. So I guess I'm not surprised that it's not lasting nearly as long. There's probably an opportunity here. I could probably go to sleep. I could probably put the D1 Mini to sleep while it's waiting for 15 seconds for things to go on. I probably can't do deep sleep because I've got too much state I have to retain, but I might be able to use a light sleep and cut it
Well, if
down
you
to
want to
20
write it
milliamps
to
or something.
an SD card.
Well, I want to update the display. I want to.
Oh, right.
So I've been thinking, do I want to have it just asleep, and when I want to see the value, I come press a button and it wakes up and does this 40-second thing and updates the display. Do I want to sit there for 40 seconds? Not really. Do I want to run a cable to the
What would be
processor to
the
give
fun
it
of
some real
that?
power? Yeah, what would be the fun with that? I mean, I bought this e-paper thing so that it could sleep most of the time.
I mean, you've got all those years as an electrical engineer. You've got to put it to use.
That's right. We got to find a better solution.
Yeah, a more complicated solution. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Anything
Right.
done easily can also be done complicated. So why
Yeah.
not choose the complicated way?
That's right. You're supposed to use the tools you have the way they're meant to be used, not
If it's not broken, then make it more complicated.
all in the name of learning, right? Which I have been. So, all right. Anybody else working on anything fun?
Well, I don't actually have anything to say about, I mean, I guess I could. So I've been writing an app. It's actually a financial app, bookkeeping app. I've been doing coding for like 45 years and Python for about half that. But during all of that time, I've never done GUIs until now. I mean, I've done web related GUIs, right? But that's a different thing. That's HTML. I've never actually done a GUI that runs on a computer. So I'm learning. So the C++ version is called WX widgets, and the Python version is WX Python. And this is an API that allows you to write GUI applications in Python. It's just a wrapper over WX widgets. They're both done by the same
University
organization.
of Edinburgh, right?
Huh?
University of Edinburgh, they come out of originally.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's out of the UK somewhere.
Yep, Edinburgh.
Yeah. So because I'm such a neophyte at writing this GUI code with this API, I've been using two different AI apps. I've been using Google's app and I've been using OpenAI. And I would ask them a question, how do you do this in WX Python? Well, 50% of the time, the Google AI hallucinates. I mean, actually gives
It
me
gives you it gives you an answer that looks reasonable but doesn't work, right?
it. Not only does it not work, they call methods and use variables on the WX API that don't exist. I mean, really stuff that's out there. Luckily, you can tell Google, sorry guys, this didn't work. And it's because of technical reasons. OpenAI seems to be a little better. Oh, by the way, both of them you can say regenerate, and sometimes the second version is better than the first version. Not always. Um, so OpenAI, I just used it again today with OpenAI and how to. So there are, when you do GUI stuff, they have what they call sizers. So, I mean, the traditional way of placing items on the screen is to give them coordinates. However, coordinates don't size right when the monitor sizes and resolutions change. So, in order to get around that problem, GUI applications use GUI APIs use sizers. So, there's WX Python has, I don't know, 5 or 6 different sizers. I've used 3 or 4 of them. The one I like the most is called the grid bag sizer. It allows you to have different widths, different columns. You can put sizers inside of sizers, which I've done. You can do a lot of real fancy stuff. So one of the things I had to figure out is so one of the things this app is going to do is it's going to allow you, so it comes with a bunch of default columns and they're all defined in TOML files. You know what the TOML config files are? It's TOML. They look like the Windows configuration files,
INI files.
like INIs, but they're much more sophisticated. than ionize. They allow you to do all sorts of stuff that ionize don't let you do. So I've decided to go this route. There happens to be a couple of nice plugins to Python that work very well. Python has a built-in one, but they even say this is only a read one. You can't write with it. So what I want to do is to create some default TOML files that generate a bunch of different panels on the screen, which you swap in and out of the main panel. And I want to be able to allow the end user to remove or add fields. Now, the data is eventually going to go into a database. So once they add data for a field, I got to throw up a warning and say, you delete this column, you're essentially deleting data. I mean, it's actually in the database, but they'd never be able to see it again because there's no way to bring it out because you've deleted the column on the actual GUI screen. It just won't show anywhere. So moving these rows up and down, I had to figure that out. That was pretty darn complicated. Actually, a guy on the WX Python blog actually been helping me with it. He actually came up with some really good ideas that I've been able to implement and work pretty well. But there's a lot of stuff that I just don't understand how to do. So I'll go to the AIs and ask. So when they say AIs are getting close to writing code, no, they're not. They're nowhere near writing code that actually works on a consistent basis. Now, maybe the ones you pay for are a little better than the free ones, but I can't believe they're that much better.
Do they compile or not?
No, these are not, nothing here compiles.
I guess that's not what I mean.
So this is
So
so the
are
final
there
product
syntax?
is Python code.
If it were C code, would it compile? Are
Oh,
there
well, the C++
syntax errors
code,
in the Python?
so the C++ code is written as shared objects in
Right. No, I'm
in
talking about the stuff that the AI generates. Is it
Oh
syntactically
no, the stuff
correct?
that's generated is all done in Python.
Right. Is the Python syntactically correct?
Oh, no, it's not. Oh, since for the most part, it doesn't break in Python, but it doesn't work either.
Okay.
It can break. So, for example, they said one time to use a variable. So, all of the variables in WX Python, now these are static variables, right? Things you would never change. There are various things in WX Python that define pieces of functionality. Okay. What kind of window you're using and yada, yada, yada. So they're all uppercase with words separated with underscores. This is a very C way of doing things. I tend to do that in Python also with static variables. I do the exact same thing in Python. Well, the Google one started off with some uppercase stuff, and then it put grid bag sizer in upper and lower case in the middle of the variable. When I looked at it on the screen, when Google showed it to me, I said, there's no way that's working. I mean, I actually went to the API just to make sure it wasn't there. It was not there. There was no way that was ever going to work. So yes, that one would have blown up had I actually tried to run code that looked that way. I mean, I was smart enough at the time when I saw it that I realized this is kind of suspicious looking.
I guess the question is it does it help you with the grunt work of making, modules and entry points and so that you can go in and fill in the code?
No, it can't even do that.
Okay.
No, so
I mean,
theoretically,
I would think it would have enough examples of what Python code looks like that it should be able to generate code that looks like Python code.
Oh, well, they can. Oh,
And
they look a
so,
lot. So the way these things normally work is they'll create a one-off script that uses WX Python that's probably under 100 code that generally will function and bring up a little window on the screen. It's extremely simplified, has no bells and whistles. They don't usually color it on the examples, but they're just trying to show you how to do something. It's that how to do something that's often broken, right? I've gone in and fixed them in a few cases and the thing worked. But what they gave me was wrong.
yeah,
But so it would, in a sense, give me an idea of the direction to go. I mean, if it couldn't even do that, I wouldn't be using it at all.
right.
So sometimes it'll say that some function exists, and I go, I've never seen that before. Let's see if it really does, because often they don't. And if they do, then I have to say, okay, are they using it correctly? And they're not always using it correctly because sometimes it's an overloaded method or function, and they are overloading it in a way that doesn't exist in any of the actual overloads. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things they do that are kind of screwed up. I just caught Open AI doing that today. They said, "Oh, use this remove if you want to remove something. It'll remove the entire row." Well, remove can only do two things. It can remove a sizer from inside of a sizer, or it can remove a window or essentially a widget in a specific index, counting from the very first one in the top left corner, going all the way to the right as far as it go, and then keep going down each row, and each one gets incremented by one, and that's its index. So if you can figure out what the index is by counting all the children, and then checking if a child is the one you want, and then you can delete it based on the index. So yeah, there's some pretty interesting stuff you can do here, but yeah. Anyway, so this whole thing, my whole little thing here is just about AI, and believe me, it's not close to writing code yet. They really aren't. So I mean, in some cases, they can write little one-offs that work, that aren't broken. But outside of that,
Can you say fix fix this method? It doesn't work the way.
Yeah, I've tried. I just did that today with the OpenAI one, and it got closer, but it still doesn't work right.
Yeah.
And I know it got closer because when I specifically said that removing can only remove an index in my situation, and it says, yes, you are correct. It can, and so you need to do it this way, but it still didn't work for some reason. And I haven't figured out exactly why yet. So that's the problem. That's my latest problem, is why I need to remove an entire row. So I need to allow a person to remove an object or a column in the database, essentially, is what it would turn out to be. So when people add data, they won't be adding data like in a spreadsheet. It'll say, here's a list of columns under specific categories, and the categories will show up on the screen. So there'll be columns under each and different. It'll have a name, which would be basically the name in the database. Although I probably will use lowercase, but on the screen I'm using uppercase. And then to the right is a field that you would actually fill in a dollar amount or some text amount or something else. And then this would save it to the database. So, and the database is really not going to be very complicated. I mean, people would think each one of these categories would need a different column, but I'm using fourth normal form database tables. which means that there's key value pairs in a database table, and it says, this is your column name, and this is the table that the data goes in, and then you link the values to the like the you connect the key in one to the value in the other. That way you can find all the data. When you parse it, it all comes out, looks like different columns, but it's not. You're doing everything in two tables. It's just a
I
neat
just
ass
did
way
it.
of saving tons of database complexity, and it allows you to add and remove columns in your database at will. Removing, though, can be a problematic, right? You already put data in January and February. You decide you don't want that column anymore. Well, guess what? Your data for January is still in the database, and you can't get to it anymore. So I got to put lots of warnings in the code. Says you remove this, you can't see it anymore. But I'll allow people to remove it at will.
Can they hide and unhide instead of remove?
Yeah, so I may be able to. That's not a bad idea. I could do that. Yeah, maybe I'll give that some thought. I didn't actually think of that before, but it's not a bad idea, because that's how the actual panels work. Panels sit in another object, and I can't remember the name of it right now. So this is the way it would work in any application, right? You flip between different screens in an application. All you're doing is hiding and showing different panels,
Yep.
right? They're all sitting there, but they're just invisible. And you just hide and show them depending on which button you click in the drop-down menu. So this also works with a key press. Was it Control or Alt? Well, I think it's Control for the actual menu items, and the menu categories are alts. But anyway. So yeah, this has been an interesting little project. It's not so little.
They never are.
No, this I figure is a year project. I can actually show you what I got so far if you want to see it, but
Will it bore us to tears?
well, all I do is flip through panels and show you the code. But I could show you the code or flip through panels, but yeah, it's not. I
I've
mean, I'm
used
not saving
WX.
anything to databases yet. Don't even have any database code at all written yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, it would probably bore you to tears. So I'll hold off after it actually is a little
I
bit more
started going through the
substantial.
the upgrades in Python 3.12, and got to the point I didn't understand a word they were saying.
Yeah, so I'm using Python 3.11.4. Now, interesting, 3.11 is about 33% faster than 3.10. They have made a tremendous speed increase to Python between 3.10 and 3.11. So the more people say Python's too slow, the more I say bah humbug.